When your friends drive 9 hours to meet you in Escalante, Utah, you want to show them a good time. And that's exactly what we intended to do when our good friends Tim and Megan met up with us to hike to Phipps Arch. This hike is rated as moderate, with a distance of 6.4 miles and an elevation gain of 603 feet. Even though this trail is rated as moderate, it can be a little bit tricky. At the time when we went, there wasn't a ton of information on how to find the arch, and you'll see some of the struggles that we went through in just a little bit. If you plan on attempting this hike, just know that this is not your standard run-of-the-mill hike. This trail involves several water encounters and rock scrambling that can get kinda sketchy at times. So bring shoes that give you plenty of traction and be prepared to take them off if you don't want them to get wet. If you are completely opposed to your feet getting wet, there is a longer route to this trail. It's off mile marker 71 on Highway 12. This route is supposedly more scenic and has 0 water crossings. The only challenge is this one adds a considerable amount of distance and comes in with an overall length of 9.2 miles. Even though the other trail is supposedly more beautiful, I wouldn't hesitate to do this hike again, especially since now we know the right way to go to get to the arch. You're going to spend a good portion of this hike in the shadows of tall sandstone walls, which was just fine for us because we love seeing all the unique and weird ways that sandstone is eroded by the elements. There are quite a few sections on this trail where you will encounter dense vegetation. We didn't see any poison oak or poison ivy, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist out here. So a good rule of thumb that you can go by is that if you don't know what it is, try not to touch it. Tim tried to find a way to stay on the trail while going through this tunnel, but unfortunately it was a dead end. At right around 0.6 of a mile, you should come to a dirt road crossing. Luckily at this part in the trail, everything is still really well marked and easy to follow. You're still about 0.2 of a mile before you get to the stream crossing, but there are some downed trees and branches that you're going to have to get over along the way. Lucky for us, Megan is one of the best in the business when it comes to getting around trail obstructions gracefully, and she put on quite a show. One thing that you will have to be careful of is that there are several sections on this trail that butt up against private property. Please be respectful of the homeowners. It's things like trespassing that get fun trails like these shut down. And here we are at right around 0.8 of a mile at the first water crossing. This is the only one on the trail that is mandatory that you go across, but there are several times where you will be close to water and there's a chance where you might slip and fall in. Since it was quite early in the hike and no one wanted to do the rest of it in wet shoes, everyone opted to remove their shoes for the first crossing. There is a chance that you will encounter wildlife on this hike. Somehow with his eagle vision, Tim spotted this guy hiding in the brush.
I'm a snake!
Luckily this guy wasn't a rattlesnake and he just posed for a couple pictures and then went on his way. After hiking through more dense brush, the trail opened up to a bit of a clearing. If you enjoy exploring while you hike, this area has you covered. As we made our way along the trail, someone spotted something in the bushes that looked kind of like a cave, so we thought we'd go check it out. I'm not sure if this small cave has any type of historical significance or if it's just been used for bonfires recently, but it was cool to check out for a second. Depending on when you visit this area, bug spray might not be a bad idea. Megan is obviously playing it up for the camera a little bit, but it was a little bit on the buggy side out there. This brings us to the 1.3 mile mark and the last water encounter that you'll have on the way out. Depending on when you go and how high the water level is, you might get wet here as well, but luckily for us, the water was just low enough to give us a small shelf to sneak by on. That was the last time that we would be seeing water until it was time to head back. At right around the 1.6 mile mark, you should find yourself at a sandy wash. This is where you will be switching from the Escalante River Trail that you've been on to the Phipps Arch Trail. We ended up crossing over the wash and taking a smaller trail that snaked its way back and forth across the sandy wash, but we didn't know that you could save some effort and time and just walk down the center of the sandy wash. If you take the side trails, you're going to have to deal with some pretty thick vegetation. Taking the side trails also mean you're going to have to make your way up and over some more fallen trees, or you could just ride them like a bull. However you decide to get over them, you're eventually going to end up at this chain link fence that just has a small gap to squeeze through between two trees. This is where things started to get really confusing for us. V had printed out some somewhat vague directions, and unfortunately there were no more trail markers at this point. We had the GPS coordinates of the arch, but we didn't know exactly how to get to it. At least we had the comfort of knowing that we were not alone in our confusion. If you look on websites like AllTrails, there is lots of stories of people that couldn't quite find out where to go. I had started my GPS tracker a little bit early, so it wasn't a reliable source of data. But if you set yours right, the climb up to the arch should be about 2.7 miles from the trailhead. Since we didn't have reliable information, we spent a fair amount of time trying to find a way to climb up to the arch. We climbed up into several smaller side slide canyons, but unfortunately they were all dead ends. Things were starting to seem a little bit desperate, but luckily our group didn't have any quitters in it and we were determined to find the arch. Unfortunately, Tim's shoe was not quite as determined. It fell apart in the middle of the hike and we had to use some paracord to repair it. Optimism was high in the group as we hiked in a little bit further than we thought we would need to, and our suspicions were confirmed when we saw our first rock cairn. The first rock cairn was not where we turned to climb up, but it was an indication that we were on the right trail. What we ended up finding out, and what everyone should know that is planning on attempting this hike, is that you need to actually circle around to the back side of the slick rock area, and this is where you're going to climb up. Once you get here, the rock cairns are going to become much more frequent and they're going to lead you all the way up to Phipps Arch. The trail will become a lot easier to follow at this point, but it will also become a lot more technical. It's a good thing that sandstone is such a grippy surface because you are going to be going up some very steep inclines. We would probably not advise this hike for anyone with a fear of heights because some of the trickiest parts of the climb are up towards the top. Even though there are trail markers here, it doesn't really seem like there is a set trail at this point. It's more about finding the best way up towards the top for your skill level. This is the last part of the main climb and in my opinion is probably one of the sketchiest parts. If this rock was made of anything besides sandstone, this climb probably would not be possible. It's super smooth and steep, but thankfully the added grip of the sandstone makes it not too bad. We were almost to the arch. The GPS was showing that it was just a couple hundred yards away. We had just a couple climbs left to do, including this one that had this awesome use of a repurposed tree. After the tree climb, it is pretty much smooth sailing for the rest of the way to the arch. In fact, if that tree climb does look tricky to you, there is another way that we'll show you in just a second. At the top of the climb, you will be greeted by a series of blind arches. It's a pretty cool spot to check out, and if that wasn't good enough, you will also be greeted by one heck of a view of the valley that you just climbed out of. From the blind arches, we were just a short walk over to our first view of the elusive Phipps Arch. And I'll be the first to admit, when I first saw it, it didn't seem super impressive. It actually looked a bit more like a cave from this angle. There were actually several other blind arches and caves in the area that looked like they might be more interesting than Phipps Arch. But as we made our way over towards it, we started to see why so many people try to find it, and it is definitely worth the struggle to go see it. It's not until you get in front of this arch that you can see how big it truly is. Phipps Arch has a span of 100 feet and is 30 feet high. We went on a slightly warmer day and the shade that we got from it was definitely appreciated. One other awesome thing about climbing up into the arch is the beautiful 360-degree view that you'll get from inside of it. There was a nice cool breeze blowing under the arch and it was super relaxing. I wish that we could have spent a couple hours here, but unfortunately we spent so much time trying to find the arch that it was starting to get a little bit late. We definitely wanted to get back to the car before it got dark. The way that we are going to be heading out is the way that you would want to come up if you don't want to climb up that tree. That is the only part of the climb that would be any different. You would still have to scale the rest of the mountain on the way up. It would definitely make the last part a little bit easier, but I thought the tree was actually pretty fun and I would go that way again. To get back to the spot where you climbed up, you're going to make your way down this very small slide canyon and then you're going to make a right at the end of it. You're going to be walking around 50 or 60 yards down the ledge till you get to the down climb, and I'm sure you'll recognize it when you see it. Be sure to take your time here. I don't know why there's always something that's so much more sketchy about down climbing. I'm not sure if it's the way that your body's positioned differently or just the fact that you're looking down this massive hill that makes it seem just a bit more sketchy. You are a few more short and sometimes tricky down climbs from the sandy wash at this point. Once you reach the bottom, you can take a small moment to celebrate the fact that the hardest parts of this hike are now behind you. The other thing that's great is that it is a whole lot easier to find your way back to the car than it is to find the way to the arch your first time. We always recommend having some sort of GPS tracking, whether you're using Strava on your phone or you have something like we use, which is the Garmin InReach. Even though our breadcrumb trail was a complete disaster from all the side canyons that we took to search for the arch, it was easy to see which lines we would need to follow to get back to the car. This hike definitely put us to the test. With all of the searching that we had to do for the arch, we took a trail that was supposed to be 6.4 miles and made it over 9 miles long. But thankfully, we are all stubborn and we refuse to give up. And not only that, but this is a super fun group and we were laughing the entire time. I will admit though, we were pretty blasted by the end of the hike and we didn't even take off our shoes in the water crossings. And here's our second snake sighting of the day. I know that Escalante is home to some truly legendary hikes like Lower Calf Creek Falls among others, but I think that this one does definitely deserve a spot on your to-do list as well. This hike is fun, unique, and it gives you a great opportunity to take a refreshing dip towards the end of the hike. And not only that, but I actually appreciated the challenge of finding the arch. It's not like walk down this dirt road, look at this thing, and then come back. There was a little bit more challenge involved, and I appreciate that. And I'd like to give a big shout out to Tim and Megan. Thanks for coming out and making this experience such a fun one. And I'm sorry about your shoe, Tim. May it rest in peace. If you enjoyed this adventure, be sure to hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe because those are the best things that you can do to support this channel. Check us out on Instagram at thatadventurelife_official. And for all the information about this hike and other awesome things to do in Utah, head on over to thatadventurelife.com.